Welcome back. We are in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 34. Let's go. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 34. This is daily verse by verse podcast. We're going to start reading from 32. It says, "But recall the former days in which after you were illuminated, you endured a great struggle with sufferings, partly while you were made a spectacle both by reproaches and tribulations, and partly while you became companions of those who were so treated." 34. "For you had compassion on me and my chains, and joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods, knowing that you have a better and an enduring possession for yourselves in heaven." So this is Paul talking to the Hebrews, people who had come to Christ. They were curious about Christ. They had accepted Christ, but they were trying to really kind of getting pulled back into this Jewish culture and tradition and pulled away from Christ. Now, today we have Messianic Jews, and that is someone who is Jewish by heritage, but has accepted that Jesus is the Messiah, which is the correct way. And then we have Christians who are not Jewish by heritage, but who have accepted Jesus as the Messiah. That is how you get to heaven, by accepting Jesus as the Messiah. What's so interesting here, so Paul says, "For you had compassion on me." So he's saying there's these other people who had compassion on him, on himself, Paul, while he's writing this. And that's great. We want to have compassion on people. We want to love on people. Why? We were created in the image of God. When God came and dwelt among us, he was Jesus in the flesh, looked just like us. Though he was homeless, he was not to look at. He was not rich or powerful. He was a servant. He was humbled. He was beaten. He was rejected. He was persecuted. He came first time as a suffering servant. Next time he comes, it'll be as a conquering king. We want to have compassion on people. How can we do this? There's lots of different ways. We can love on them. We can be kind to them. We can share. We can pray for them. We can share money with them and resources, encourage them, give them a hand up, lift them up, help them out of whatever rut they may be in, and help them to see that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And so many of those people may already know that Jesus is the way and the truth and the life, and we still get to help them and have compassion on them. Just as we want to have compassion on us, right? So often we want things for ourselves, but we're not willing to give them to other people. Let's be willing and actually giving compassion on other people. So it says, "And for you had compassion on me and my chains, and joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods, knowing that you have a better and enduring possession for yourselves." So we've got this earthly versus heavenly, the temporary versus the eternal, the temporal versus the eternal. What we have on earth right now is temporary. Maximum you're going to be here is, call it 100, 110, 120 years, right? Most people it's 70, 80, 90 years. Some it's only 50, 40, or 30, right? I've had some very good friends die in their 40s. This past 5 years, I've had three friends from college, Ferry brothers, die. And actually more than that. But we want to understand that this earthly is temporal. We want to maximize it. We want to make the most of it. We don't want to just let it get away from us. We don't want to waste this time, right? We don't want to make it all about ourselves. We want to make it about other people, because that is how we share Christ. We want to be the hands and feet of Christ. So check this out, because I think this verse is huge where we are specifically in America right now. It says, "For you had, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods." Right now, we are in a very charged America, a very political America, very polarizing views and opposite. And there is hatred. There is rejection. We are losing our right to free speech. I think our government is very close to turning over its democracy to socialism or communism. And that is very sad for a lot of Americans. Roughly half of the population does not want to see that. We are a democracy. I think we are the greatest country in the history of the world for one simple reason. We were the only country ever founded on biblical principles. But we have gone away from that. We are now Sodom and Gomorrah. We have Las Vegas-ized the entire country. We have San Francisco-ized the entire country. And so the majority of Americans are not following Christ, are not reading the Bible, are not praying, and therefore this country It's a Titanic. It's going down at some point. If we don't get raptured, then the country's going to fall at some point. And I don't know if that's in 100 years or 50 years or 5 years. And it's very sad. It's very sad for half of the population. But here's the deal. We can read the news and argue and just get mad and let it ruin our minds and take it out on our family, on our wives, husbands, kids, friends, employers, employees, and that type of deal. Because you can read the news, right? And you can get really sad. You can look at social media and get really sad and feel defeated. Or you can look at this verse and say, you know what? Even if we lose America to socialism or communism, even if they would take away my right to free speech, we can have compassion and joyfully accept the plundering of our goods, even if they come in and take everything. They take away our ability to give tax-free to our churches and Christ-centered organizations, even if they increase the tax rate to 70%, like you have in some countries. Even whatever you've got in your mind or potentially could happen, we are still to joyfully go through it. So if the news is getting you down, don't watch it. If social media is getting you down, turn off the app. Maybe come back in a month. But you'll probably find that you have a lot more joy not reading the news, not watching the news, not going to that social media app. And then you can focus more on Christ. You'll be a better husband, wife, parent, colleague, worker, employer, etc. Why don't we try that and realize that at some point, this country just will go down. It's just because the country's turned its back on God, and every country who's ever done that has gotten taken down. Happened in the northern kingdom of Israel. Happened in the southern kingdom of Israel. You can look at entire civilizations and people groups who are no longer around. The Assyrians, they're not around. The Babylonians, they're not around. The Amalekites, they're not around, right? So we don't want to just sit here and think we can go on forever. We want to vote. We want to lovingly share the truth with politicians and city council and Congress, etc. But if they go an entirely different way, this is a great verse for us to turn to and say, joyfully accept the plundering of your goods, knowing that you have a better and an enduring possession for yourselves. I'm reading a book about a lady and her husband who were severely tortured. They lived in Pakistan. And when she was growing up at the age of 9, her dad fell sick to tuberculosis. So he couldn't work. And they were literally a day-to-day paycheck, daily paycheck to put food on the table. And because he got sick with tuberculosis, there was no food. So this girl had to go and work in the fields. And she had to go in the city. And her mom said, and her dad said, we're sending you out as a sheep among wolves, right? And they are going to viciously attack you. And a sheep has no way to defend themselves except for one, the shepherd. The shepherd is their only defense. And so they said, Jesus is your only defense. Go out and love and be kind. Don't fight back. Don't fall prey to their aggression. Just shut your mouth and just do your work and trust God to take care of it. And she went out and she worked and picked cotton. And at the end of the day, with all that hard work and blood on her fingers, she'd come home with the equivalent of an American 10 cents. 1-0. 1/10 of a dollar. And what was striking about this is it happened and it was taking place during a time when the Pakistani government had just been overthrown. The leader had been executed, and the Muslims had come in and started to enforce Sharia law, Sharia courts, all of that. And this is a Christian who hadn't gone to the public school, and the schools typically taught the Quran, but she had never been taught the Quran because she grew up and went to a Christian school down at the church down the end of the road. So very interesting. And it made me feel about where we are in America, right? We are sheep amongst wolves, right? We're not going to win anybody to Christ if we're just angry and pushing it and you suck and I hate you. But going out with love, voting, but trusting that at some point this country is going to fall and Jesus is more important than this country. This country is not going to save us. Jesus saves people. Then in verse 35, it says, therefore, do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward. So don't give up. Press in. Right? The devil wants you to give up. He wants you as a Christian with conservative biblical values and a conservative worldview, looking at the world through a conservative lens, a biblical lens. The devil wants you to say, I can't take it anymore. I give up. I'm out. I can't do this. I'm done. And God wants you to say, persevere. This is a race. You're here for a limited time. You can do this. Press through it. Come on. It's more important than how you feel or how comfortable you are. Jesus is far more concerned about our character than is about our comfort. And then in verse 36, he says, for you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. You see, endurance is one of the key ingredients of success for a Christian while on earth. We must endure day after day after day. We get up, we may be feeling sad, we may be hurt, we may be weak, we may be persecuted. God calls us to endure. Jesus did it, Paul did it, and he calls us to do it. So that after you have done the will of God, doing the will of God requires endurance because you will be persecuted for doing the will of God. You just will. Spiritually, by the demons. Emotionally, by people who kick you out of their friend group. Financially, by not getting a raise, by getting fired for your beliefs. And even physically with potential persecution that we see in a lot of parts of the world. We don't see it yet in America, but it's coming, I'm sure. And remember that we're saved for our deeds, not by our deeds. It is not this, you earn your way to heaven. It is you're justified by placing your faith in Christ, and you get to spend the rest of your life leading others to Christ, right? We're saved for our deeds, not by our deeds. And tomorrow we will pick up in verse 37. You can check us out on pretty much any major podcast platform. Just look up Daily Verse by Verse, Mike Massey. God bless. Have a blessed day.